As for the rapid rise in kids identifying as trans, as the writer Julia Serrano has pointed out, when you look at a chart of left-handedness among Americans over the 20th century, you see a massive spike when we stopped forcing kids to write with their right hand, and then a plateau. That doesn't mean everyone became left-handed or that there was a rapid onset southpaw dysphoria. It means people were free to be who they fucking were.
The video you linked to about puberty blockers by Mia Mulder tries to compare trans identities to left-handedness. There are a bunch of reasons why this comparison is not helpful to the point you want to make. The first is that left-handedness increased across the population uniformly in a way that gender identities did not. For example, left-handedness did not increase dramatically in homosexual and autistic teenagers, and then also in old men who watch a lot of porn. Also, this increase took place over nearly half a century. On the other hand, the increases in referrals to gender clinics took place over the period of about 7 or 8 years, and even then, left-handedness only increased from 3 to 5% to around 12%. This is not just smaller, but many times smaller than the increase in trans identities that has occurred specifically among particular demographics such as teenage girls. What the gender theists have taken the time to ignore is that gender identity and left-handedness had very different starting points in terms of their prevalence in the population during what we are to assume is their socially suppressed periods. When left-handedness was persecuted, 2.5% of the population was still left-handed. This would mean that if you had 4 classrooms with 25 children each, then statistically, just over 2 of the classes would have a left-handed student. On the other hand, gender dysphoria was much more rare during its comparative period of suppression. Historically, gender dysphoria afflicted 0.1% of the population and almost exclusively boys. That would mean that you would need 40 classrooms of only boys or 80 co-ed classrooms before you would expect to find even one child with gender dysphoria. So, strangely enough, left-handedness, the condition we all agree is innate, was both more prominent in the population even when it was suppressed, but then it also grew much more slowly when it did increase. The growth from about 2.5% to between 10 and 12% of the population, which is an increase of around 350% in terms of prevalence, took 40 years. The explosion of trans identities happened in just 7. There is no way it would even be possible for left-handedness to have experienced a 4,400% increase over 7 years, because such an increase would have meant that the entire country was left-handed even before the 7 years was up. This is why it is apt to say that gender identities are a social contagion. They do not occur uniformly among the population as they would if trans identities were simply an innate human characteristic akin to being left-handed. Funnily enough, in Mia Mulder's video, he actually tells parents,
I thought that this would be a video on gray areas. But when it comes to the science is in. But I had to do a lot of research to do that. I had to go through many scientific articles and consult friends and scientists.
ooh,
Who can know how to decipher that. It's very difficult.
It's so difficult, in fact, basically every moron with a video camera is doing it.
And I do this as my job now, right? I read stuff and I tell you what I've read. I do a book report. But you don't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. And all of that is pretty difficult. But, you know, I enjoyed learning something. And I'm sure that you do too. But you might not want to dig into scientific articles every single week. that can be a bit archaic and difficult.
Yeah, this coming from a person who didn't even think to compare the scale and time period over which two statistical increases occurred. The only thing that mattered to them was, look, both numbers went up at the end.
As for the rapid rise,
Who cares how quickly or by how much or where either number was before they started increasing? Two numbers going up means I can win my very own bucket of Lupron. So checkmate, turfs.
who the fuck are they hurting?
On a gathering storm comes a non-passing man in a shiny white coat with a trans left hand.
Wrap you in his arms, tell you that you've been a good boy. He'll rekindle all the dreams that took you a lifetime to destroy. He'll reach deep into the hole, heal your shrinking soul, but there won't be a single thing that you can do. He's a god, he's a man, he's a ghost, he's a guru. They're whispering his name through this disappearing land.
But hidden in his coat is a trans left hand.
Who the fuck are they hurting?